Okay, so I thank you again for coming back after the break, and we are here to again to somehow prolong the theme I spoke about and to discuss in this variety of people and mothers and fathers in various ways about the topic of spiritual and physical parenthood. Thank you very much that you agreed to participate in this discussion. I sent all of them my, let's say, 3 starting questions, but of course we can then discuss some more topics which will somehow appear during the discussion. So my first question, if you are willing to answer, is there any connection between spiritual and physical parenthood? It was my question, which I also asked myself. So what would be your answer? If whoever wants to start, maybe I don't want to force you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, yes, definitely there is a connection between spiritual and physical parenthood, but not in the sense that these two have to meet, have to cross their roads somewhere, but in the sense that both of them have to become spiritual, to be transformed into spiritual relationship. The physical parenthood has to become also spiritual, and the spiritual parenthood has to become really spiritual parenthood. And of course, as spiritual parenthood, we have to define the relationships that are founded on freedom, and perhaps more important, are directed and lead to freedom. So I think that the connection of all these types of parenthood is the need for the 3 exits, for the 3 exoduses. I mean, the exit from the womb. Metaphorically, we speak about the womb of the mother, but it has to do with all parents, all type of parents. Exit from the womb. This always happens. Then the exit from the breast. This also always happens. And the third is an exit that does not always happen. And this is the exit from the embrace, from the lap. And if we want someone to be fully born, he has to get through all 3 exits. Otherwise, there are many people who die before even being born really and truly.
Thank you.
Thank you. So when I thought about this question at home, I noticed several points. So the first point is what is common between both. I think it's giving the orientation in life and in faith, and this is in both cases. As a physical mother and as well as a spiritual mother or parent, as a pastor in the church, I embody a certain model of life and a certain system of values, and I inspire my physical as well as spiritual children to a similar approach to life and faith. So this giving orientation is a very important task of both, and I think that it's connected with a great responsibility, especially with responsibility for their spiritual formation, for their value system, and in the case of physical children, also with responsibility for their mental health, for their safety, for their material well-being, for socialization. Yeah, so it's a very broad scope of responsibilities. And so when I reflect on this, I also sometimes have doubts. Am I a good physical and spiritual mother. To be honest, I know myself, I know my weaknesses, I know that I am sometimes uncertain and sometimes I grope in the dark. So in theological words, a spiritual as well as physical parent is always a justified sinner. Yeah. So, and this leads me to another point that it's very important when I know this about myself. It's very important to pray for the gifts of Holy Spirit, especially for wisdom, for patience, for kindness, and for ability to discern between good and evil. And the last point, traditionally, the raising a child or guiding someone, spiritual guiding of someone, is understood as a process which is going only in one direction. A parent guides a child, and the child should become a mature person. I think that it's important to conceive this process as process which happens in both directions, from the parent to a child and from a child to a parent. So to be a parent means that I'm also involved in this process of maturation, not only the child, and my creativity as a parent is developing during this process of raising the child. I receive various impulses from children, and so I am also, as a parent, involved in this process of maturation with them. So I think it's all from me.
I find two connections between spiritual and physical parenthood. The first one is that both of them are participation of on God's parenthood, God's motherhood or God's fatherhood, which means giving the life. To be father or to be mother means to give life or to introduce into life. And God is the first and who gives life and who introduces into life. And we can participate on this process by passing the life, letting the life pass, go through our lives, either physically or spiritually. So I find this connection that it's participation on the God's parenthood. And the second one, that one cannot be mother or father alone. That to be mother or father requires the other. Only two parents can pass the life, and I think that the same is in the spiritual parenthood, where it's not so obvious maybe, but when I'm alone, I cannot be a spiritual father or spiritual mother. I think that the relationship with God or with the Holy Spirit, which is mentioned also in the spiritual parenthood, is necessary to be a spiritual parent.
Thank you. I think that much has been already said. If there would be no connection, we would not speak about spiritual fatherhood or motherhood with the same word. So there is the connection. And I think the first thing which came to my mind was that it's mutual relationship, but it is asymmetrical relationship. And that sometimes we miss the symmetry and the mutuality. I think both the physical and the spiritual parent has slightly different duties to the other than the other way around. And This is why I would speak about asymmetry. Also, I think another thing, the difference, for example, between having a friend. With friend, there is some mutuality and usually also some symmetry in the relationship. With the physical but also spiritual children, you may accompany some people with whom there would not be first the relationship of mutual sympathy or mutual attraction or closeness. If I put it brutally, you may have sometimes children, physical or spiritual, that you would not particularly like. You would not choose them as your friend. I mean, ideally you would want to, but there would be cases like that as well. And these are quite important cases. I think in families where there are some children with difficulties, but also on the spiritual journey, because sometimes quite complicated characters of people who don't get easily friends. They may need spiritual direction and they come for it. And I think mistaking them for possible friends or using the language of friendship can sometimes do more harm than good. So there is one thing, friendliness in approach and the expectation of the symmetry, which I think is not typical for this type of relationship. And now I will relativize what I have said. And this would be coming closer to what Pavel was talking about. We speak also about God in the language of a parent, that there is the pattern, the children of Abraham, the children of God. This is the image, the parent and the child. But as we try to talk about during this conference, there is no eternal childhood. I think it was Aleš who said that we were not created to remain children. And it has different place in the physical and in the spiritual relationship. Of course, physical children remain children always to the parents, even when they are adult, and when there would be the situation like we could see on the Dormition icon, like the inverted Madonna when Christ carries the soul of Mary in his embrace. But still, you remain a child. But gradually in that relationship, there is a transition from dependency to friendship. I think in the spiritual fatherhood or motherhood, there should be also a similar transition, although it may not be that that person would necessarily become your friend, your personal friend, but that that person would become the friend of God and that that person would become the friend of others. Helping them to develop this ability, I think, is vitally important. And another thing which I would want to point out is the maybe difference in how long the relationships last. The physical parenthood is a lifetime thing. With the spiritual parenthood, it differs because the relationships are so different from each other. There are times when it is a lifetime thing as well. And there are times when you just sort of meet people on part of their journey and then they travel on. And this is also part of the not owning the people, because there may be also a time that people may need somebody else who would accompany them than you. And letting go and sometimes encouraging to let go is good. And it's very different getting rid of and allowing people to proceed further, which would be good for them.
Okay, thank you. Those were very difficult questions you sent us, Katerina. And I'm happy that I'm at the end of the road, that now I understand the question. But although I'm utterly puzzled by the concept of spirituality, because I don't really know what it means, and also physical, actually, I don't know. But yeah. But then I thought, and I may be looking at it more from a philosophical point of view, maybe there is also a difference between a father and a mother. And as a father, my physical connection with my children, I've 3 children and 1 wife. What is my physical connection with my children? It's 3 short moments of joy, and whereas I think as a mother from the beginning, it's a more physical thing. I mean, and I think some psychoanalyst once explained to me that maybe the reasons why in many cultures, although feminists may object to it, but that in many cultures the surname is given by the father because the connection with the mother is already there, is already obvious, but as a father you always adopt your child, even if you're the physical father. And that's why you need to give this name to recognize it as your child. And so it is automatically, that's how I experienced, wholly spiritual by this fact of adopting your child. That's already on the level of meaning. The level of the physical connection is futile as a father, I would say. Of course, they live in the same house, and that's a physical thing as well. But and what is that physical? What is that spiritual thing then? I think there is of course, there is the spiritual in the religious sense and so on, but there is a fundamental layer of spirituality that consists in loyalty, I think, to your child, and that's also where a kind of difference with friendship is, because a friendship can end, but in a way you will always be, in my case, the father, and the child will always be my child, and you cannot get rid of it. You can even, I work in the prison, you know, a lot of broken relationships also between fathers and mothers and children, but still you notice, even if they are completely alienated from each other, it is there in the form of a lack of something. So that means that the absent father and mother are still there. There is a kind of, and that's the deepest spiritual layer for me, which you can interpret theologically in covenant terms if you want. But I mean, that's for me the basis of everything.
Thank you very much. Do you want to react to each other? I think maybe you have some, yes.
If I could comment a little bit what you said, the difference between the physical and spiritual parenthood, that the spiritual doesn't last so long.
Sometimes it does, but not always.
Yeah, but I think that isn't it the same case as when I leave my family and I begin to, the parenthood remains, and when I leave my spiritual father or mother, he remains always my father. But of course, I don't meet him maybe or communicate with him so often. But he always remains my father. Or
Yes and no, I would say. He can become your friend, for example, which is a different role. And you can have more spiritual parents in your life. They would remain, but not in the same position. I think here there is a difference. And of course, the prayer which you mentioned before is important, and it lasts and it embraces also the people whom you have accompanied in the past, or you have accompanied you in the past. But it's a relationship of a different intensity. It may have the intensity over a period of time, which is different for different people. And I think in this sense, I would insist that there, at least the way I understand it, that there is a difference.
okay, maybe one piece of this remains as a thanksgiveness towards my parents, gratitude, and also toward my spiritual father.
Yeah. And on the positive side, sometimes the spiritual fathers or mothers, in terms of the intensity, they can have even more profound influence on some of your life-giving decisions. So it's not a competition of this type, and it can be really vitally important orienting role. That there is no doubt about it, that it can be like this, although if it is not always like this.
I agree that the blood ties are permanent and are always there, the physical relationships. But again, perhaps this is the great advantage of these ties, the blood ties, but at the same time, a great danger. How can we explain the fact that even Jesus himself was very suspicious, and sometimes he used very hard expressions towards criticizing the blood ties, the ties with our own kinship, with the land, etc. Huh?
Thank you very much for that. It reminds me of another thing which is quite important to realize when we move at the intentional level and when we move at the empirical level, because they are very different levels. We can speak about the idealizations or how ideally the spiritual and the physical parenthood should be, or we can speak about how it is, and in our experience there would be good examples and terrible examples. And in our own experience, when we try to look ourselves, we can see both of these examples in ourselves. I think this is what Tabita tried to speak about as well. So I think both the blood ties can go really wrong, but also the spiritual fatherhood or motherhood can turn into a sort of, the big brother or the spiritualized manipulation of the worst kind. It can happen as well. Exactly. Or sometimes even only possessive, I would say, without the love. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much. We can move, we still have time, to my second question. What is most important in your view to be a good parent, both physical, spiritual? It's up to your experience. Sorry for the question. Athanasios.
I have a lot of things in my mind, but I will try to summarize, picking up three points. What I wish to accomplish is first to understand my own parenthood as a gift, to understand my son as a gift, a present offered to me. It has to do with this possession caricature of love. The second is that I wish to teach my son to think, or ways how to think, but not to dictate him what to think. And this is discipleship in a huge effort that the child has to become able to be taught how to criticize, how to question the norms of the society, the stereotypes of the society, etc., for itself. I want to tell him that in our days, the human being has become an animal laborans, but he has to be also an existence orans. Of course, we have to say a lot on this theme, but I proceed to the third point, that I wish to lose my sleep for his sake, but I do not want to convey to him my anxiety. I try to be, into brackets, a calm power. And as a wise man had said, the religious people are often very oppressive. So he advised the other people, do not talk to your children about God. Speak to God for your children. Trying to summarize, of course, because I'm full of feelings and emotions and thoughts, but we'll have to go on.
Thank you. So, there are many things that the good parent should do, so I will choose two things. I think it's very important to respect the child, physical, spiritual, as a unique person, and to support its own original personality and original development. Not to try press him or she into some pre-given forms. And in this connection, I would like to quote a very nice sentence from Comenius, from his book informatorium for the maternity school. According to Comenius, a child is not a piece of wood which we should carve. Yeah. But it's developing according its own internal laws, for example, as a plant, and what he or she needs are good, convenient external conditions, and especially kind care. So it was Comenius. So I like this metaphor. A child is not a piece of wood. And the second thing, I think it's very important to reflect own use of power, and this is in the case of physical as well as a spiritual parent. I think that even if I, for example, as a physical mother, prefer partnership, education, partnership, or partner approach when I raise my children, sometimes it is necessary to use the parent power when I want to solve some conflicts and when I want to set rules and limits for them. And I think in these cases, then it is necessary to reflect on was I right? Or sometimes I can realize that my behavior was not correct, that I made a mistake. And in these cases, I think it's very important to be able to apologize even to a child. And I think this approach can be something what prevents the idealization of a parent. Yeah, so that's all from me.
Okay, I was I was thinking about two things, maybe not the most important things, but maybe I mean some just two important things. But there will be more important things. Okay, the first thing was brotherhood and sisterhood, because I said I have 3 children, and I experience my family as a place of ongoing conflict and war and cruelty toward each other. I mean, children are really annoying and cruel creatures, especially to brothers and sisters, and maybe, and that's also a spiritual reality. And I think if I see it as one of my really important tasks as a father to somehow, that they'll somehow learn to love each other, and that's the greatest moments of joy in my parenthood is when they love each other and when they play together and when they have joy together. And because you know what it is with brothers and sisters, they haven't chosen each other, you know, and I think it is so important to learn to live with somebody you haven't chosen. And because later in your life you will live with somebody whom you haven't chosen, namely your partner, and you think you have chosen your partner, but after 10 or 20 years you live with somebody you haven't chosen. and then it becomes really important to being able to live with somebody you haven't chosen. So okay, so I think that's one thing. And the second thing is humor, and I realized that I don't know, when we sit together in a bar and what do? We make jokes, you know, we laugh, and sometimes we have even interesting conversations about theology. But whatever we do, even if we have deep conversations, what you do is you celebrate your company, you celebrate the fact of being together, and for me humor is the best way to do that. So if I can teach my kids to have humor in life, then they will have learn the joy of being together with people. And also, I reached the stage where I make a lot of dad jokes, you know, when I make a joke and then the kid would be, yeah, dad, okay. And that's a really important spiritual lesson you teach them, that you even your parent, whom you idealize, does not take him or herself too seriously.
Thank you. It's beautiful. I think for me probably the most important thing would be seeing the other. Really seeing the other, and seeing the other not once and then remembering how I have seen that person once and thinking that I know the person, but seeing the other each time anew, and to gradually to grow into seeing the other with love. It's very easy to say, and sometimes it's quite difficult to do. And it doesn't mean, the seeing may include that you see sometimes things which are really wrong, or how that person can harm himself or herself or others. So seeing, you know, in the Ecclesiasticus, the more seeing, the more pain sometimes. It can be sometimes also this kind of seeing. Sometimes the grateful seeing, but with all the dimension of seeing. And then gratitude and love without idealization and without thinking that nothing needs to change. Because I think this attitude, probably I would say that sometimes this attitude only can lead to the gradual accepting the other as the other person is, something which is so precious for each one of us in the relationship with God. But this is a real sort of high telos into which we will probably grow the whole life.
If I should say one word, what is important for parenthood, I would say the word for, being for someone, and I could express it by three other words. The first should be the presence, to be there, and I think that just the presence is something which is very precious and very important. Either is it only the physical presence, but I would say spiritual presence is the attention, is the something that I really make this connection with the other, and I'm present. The second one would be the care, to take care of someone, to see, as Ivana said, see him, but see also his necessity, his needs, and to try to fulfill them or to take care of someone. And the third word, which is connected with parenthood for me, is the blessing. It means that the parents should bless their children, not only by the words, but by saying that you are good, you are beautiful, you are all right, I'm happy for your life, you are unique. I think that these sentences we should hear from the parents, and also as a parents to say it or to show it by something to the children.
Thank you very much. Do you want now again to comment on each other answers, maybe if you want to react? Peter.
Yes, I want to affirm the blessing, and because it's increasingly difficult, I think, for parents, I mean, at least in my country, probably everywhere, to raise your children, let's say, in a religious way. I mean, it will be very difficult, even though I'm really, convinced of my own faith. It's difficult, the religious education in the family, and yet the thing I would definitely do every night would be a small blessing by giving a little cross on the forehead and say, may God bless you. And this is what, and very often, especially my daughter would ask me, what are you doing then if you do that. She's really, and that's what triggers her interest in faith also, and she somehow understands it, and it's my little moment of catechesis. But I think this blessing is or small rituals of blessing are really valuable in that sense.
Thank you. Any other comments to your answers, if you want to comment on each other? Okay, so I think sorry, I will check time. So yeah, we have still 10 minutes. The third question is connected, and I think Ivana partly answered it in the second question. What does it mean to love a child? Because we mention love all the time, but what it means? It's difficult. You cannot define love, but still, you've already spoken about it, maybe.
I would like to, or Erich Fromm interprets it like that there is a father's love and mother's love, which are different, and he says that the mother's love is unconditioned, accepting that mother or the mother's love should accept the children as he or she is, with everything what could happen, and it's absolutely unconditioned. At the contrary, the father's love is, wouldn't say conditioned, but it's requiring, it's encouraging, it's giving the tasks, giving the goals, and so it is a little bit conditioned in some way. And Fromm says that only the combination of these two loves can lead us forward, because if we are only accepted and it doesn't motivate us to grow, and if we would be only if we would have only the father's love as requiring or demanding, we would be discouraged. And father and mother, they both can have both these loves, maybe, but it's a little bit gender division like that. So I think that these two are like two poles of the same love, which is the parents' love.
Thank you. So, would you like to answer still to my question after Pavel, or Athanasios?
This is the difficult question about the nature of love, as a matter of fact. The first is, I think, that love is not sacrificial, but it is only self-sacrificial. I think this is very important, and we can find out that suffering goes hand in hand with the joy. Suffering and co-suffering with the other. The second is that we very often encounter a very heavy misunderstanding and problem. I mean the understanding of love as this limitation. Tabita previously said something about setting limits, and I totally agree. It is very important to set limits and safeguard limits, and by using the word limit, I don't mean any kind of oppression, but the preservation of the uniqueness of each personality, otherwise the personalities get blurred, and the preservation of the uniqueness of the roles, of the different roles, not conceived as stereotypes, but as valuable and meaningful functions. And I have one more thought after what Pavel said. Yes, I already underlined the importance of the different roles, the role of father, of mother, etc. But at the same time, I'm thinking that motherhood, in a strange way, pertains all the members, all the participants of Parenthood. Even men have to acquire a kind of motherhood. I mean that, remember that St. Paul says, oh, my children, I have suffered pains of birth for the sake of you. There's a great mystery, even a great sacrament in this understanding of motherhood, and this is why I say that it pertains to all. And even the person of Mary, Mother of God, is not only the example for women, but the example of all people in the sense of the free person who freely accepts the proposition, the invitation of God, and freely proceeds to the next step.
Thank you. So I would like to stress two things, and maybe now I realize that these two things are the two poles of love Pavel was talking about. Yeah, the first thing is that to love a child means to accept it as he or she is without any conditions. Even if it is a person which is different from my wishes, which is annoying, yeah, so it happens sometimes that our children are very annoying. And the second thing is that this unconditional acceptance doesn't mean that I would agree with everything what this person says, wants, and stays for. That to love means sometimes also to give some critical feedback. So, and to support the child to become an independent, mature person. So maybe it's the second pole, the motivation. Yeah, so.
So we have still, if you want to answer the third question, Ivana and Peter.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the emphasis on the acceptance and encouragement. I would like to comment on the uniqueness. I think it's always uniqueness in motion, and that the other person, I think for love it's really important to accept also that we know the other person only partly, and that that other person knows himself or herself only partly. So that there is always space for something which is not yet. And I don't mean for idealization and now we will push for it, but something which we really do not know, the potential for good and the potential for the bad, which we do not know. And I think this would, for me, come very close both to the non-condition, because the non-condition includes not only what we know and we do not like, but we have some coping mechanisms. But it also includes what we do not know and where we do not have coping mechanisms because we just do not know what it is. So this would be, I think, one element. And with the encouragement and with sort of helping to set some ways forward, I think the love there would be, it's really important that you don't start loving these ideas more than the real person. And to be able to revise with the person, and apart from seeing, to listen and to learn. And this is, I think, another important gift of love, maybe.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So I'm not gonna answer the question. I'm gonna tell something else. No, it has to do with it. But it's just that, I mean, let me tell you something about when my first child was born. I've always been drawn to monastic life, you know. And if I ever had a conversion experience, it was during the Holy Week, which when I lived for 1 week in a Trappist monastery. Belgian Trappist monasteries are very famous, not only for their spiritual direction, But anyway, although it's actually the best beer there they have, but and they serve it at the meals when you stay there. But I don't know if it had to do with the conversion experience. But okay, sorry, but I'm going to continue anyway. No, sorry. But anyway, even when I came back from that retreat, I installed in my basement a chapel, a private chapel, where I wanted to have them. At that time, I was already together with my wife. We were not yet married, but so she was not happy with my small monastic vocation. Anyway, but after a while, when we got married and when we had a child, I again felt this need for like this rich prayer life, and I went to a Jesuit priest, and which is the best thing you can do in that situation, and a spiritual director, and I asked him, when I need to pray more, I want to have tell me how to do it in the morning, in the evening, at what time, and he looks at me and he says like, but you just told me that you just had a child. I said, yeah, it's 2 months old. And he looked at me and said, but now this child is the way God speaks to you, you know? And immediately, that was the most liberating sentence of my whole life, because I realized that this is also the vocation. This is the place where I will have to develop the kind of everyday, not a monastic spirituality. Maybe with borrowed elements from it, but you know, a family spirituality. And for me, that's what saved my life.